Behind the familiar picture of history, where European caravels discover the New World, lies the tragedy of one of the greatest demographic collapses. We are accustomed to thinking that the Aztec and Inca empires fell under the onslaught of steel and gunpowder wielded by a handful of conquistadors. But the truth is that the main conqueror was an invisible army. The smallpox, measles, and influenza viruses that the Europeans brought with them. The Great Death that swept across the continent wiped out, according to some estimates, up to 90% of the indigenous population. It was a catastrophe that depopulated cities, broke the will to resist, and made conquest not just possible, but almost inevitable. The conquistadors walked on land already devastated by silence. But what if this fundamental factor, this biological wildcard, had played out differently? History is not only what had to happen, but also what could have happened. This is a scenario in which the Aztecs, Incas, and Northern Confederations meet Europeans not with naive surprise, but with cold caution and a well-thought-out survival strategy. This is a story of how three great civilizations preserved their sovereignty, creating a completely different balance of power in the world. Watch the video to the end to find out how history might have changed if the indigenous civilizations of America had remained independent. To understand the scale of the missed opportunity, we need to look at the American continent in 1491. It was not a wild or empty land waiting for civilization. It was a densely populated and vibrant world. At the center of this world shone Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire, or more accurately, the Triple Alliance. It was one of the largest cities in the world, possibly surpassing Paris or London in size and amenities at the time. Located on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, the city was crisscrossed by a network of canals, adorned with floating chinampa gardens and giant temple pyramids. The power of the Aztecs rested on two pillars: ruthless military force, which demanded tribute from dozens of conquered peoples, and an extensive network of merchant spies known as the Poctamacos. These Pochteca were the eyes and ears of the empire, their caravans traveling hundreds of kilometers, bringing not only goods, but also valuable information about the mood in the outskirts and threats from outside. It was this information network that was the main strategic resource that the empire did not yet realize. Far to the south, at the dizzying heights of the Andes, lay another great power, Tawantinsuyu, the Inca Empire. It was a unique administrative entity, the Rome of the New World. Unlike the Aztecs, the Incas did not simply collect tribute. They integrated the conquered peoples into a single system. Their empire was stitched together by the Great Road of the Incas, Capac Ñan, a 1,000-kilometer network of paved roads, suspension bridges, and tunnels that was unparalleled in the world. Along these roads, like blood through arteries, relay runners called chasqui rushed to deliver orders and reports from anywhere in the empire to the capital, Cusco, in a matter of days. This system made it possible to govern a territory stretching from modern-day Ecuador to Chile. In the north, hundreds of other peoples lived in the forests and along the rivers. In the Mississippi Valley, echoes of the great mound culture of Cahokia still lingered. And in the northeast, powerful alliances such as the future Iroquois Confederacy were forming. This world was complex, dynamic, and ready for any internal challenges, but it was not ready for the challenge from across the ocean. The first European ships under Columbus's command landed on the shores of the Caribbean islands. In our history, this was the beginning of the end. The diseases brought by the sailors ravaged the Taino people, the indigenous population of the islands, and almost completely wiped them out in a decade or two. But let's imagine that events unfold at a different pace. The catastrophe on the islands of Hispaniola and Cuba happens just as quickly, but the trade routes between the islands and the mainland, which undoubtedly existed, managed to convey not only rumors of strange, bearded people, but something even more terrifying. Traders from the Yucatan coast who had contact with refugees from the islands bring news to Tenochtitlan not of white gods, but of the great sea that follows their appearance. They describe how entire villages are dying from fever and rashes, how bodies are covered with ulcers. Aztec priests and rulers, accustomed to harsh realities, see this not as divine intervention, but as a new, previously unknown type of warfare or plague requiring immediate and decisive action. Around the same time, in the 1510s, similar news transmitted through trade chains across the Isthmus of Panama reached the ears of Inca scouts. The Chasqui system and the wisdom of rulers such as Huayna Capac, who in our story will die of smallpox before meeting the Europeans, allowed them to quickly analyze the threat. The two greatest minds of the New World, the ruler of the Aztecs and the Sapa Inca, came to the same conclusion based on simple observation. The disease came with strangers and spread through contact. They made the only correct decision, which today we would call a zero-tolerance policy. Decrees are issued which the Chasqui messengers and Pushtessa warriors carry throughout the coastal regions. Any contact with people from across the ocean is strictly forbidden on pain of death. When their ships appear, coastal settlements must immediately evacuate inland, burning their food supplies and homes behind them. This is the Great Quarantine, a scorched earth strategy directed not against people, but against the invisible enemy they bring with them. A crisis that allows society to adapt, develop collective immunity, and most importantly, preserve its social and political structures. Empires survive, weakened but not broken, having received the most important vaccination, the vaccination against naivety. What if events had unfolded differently? In 1519, Hernán Cortés lands on the coast of Mexico. In our history, he found thousands of allies among the tribes conquered by the Aztecs. In this scenario, he finds emptiness. The villages are burned, the wells are poisoned, and the population has retreated deep into the country. His calls go unanswered. Attempts to advance deeper are met not with negotiations, but with a hail of arrows and spears from ambushes, after which the enemy immediately disappears into the forest without engaging in close combat. The Aztec Empire, warned of the threat, gives him no foothold. Cortés has no food, no allies, and no translators. Faced with scorched earth tactics and an invisible enemy, his small force is forced to return to Cuba with nothing. The same thing happened to Francisco Pizarro in Peru. The Inca coast greeted him with silence and empty villages. The first attempts at conquest failed, bogged down by logistics and the lack of a fifth column. However, it is impossible to avoid contact completely. Diseases still seep in. Smugglers, careless traders, captured prisoners. Smallpox, which arrived in the 1520s, still strikes. But the effect of this epidemic is completely different. First, thanks to quarantine and isolation, it spreads not like a forest fire, but like a smoldering peat bog, slowly in pockets. Second, society is ready for it. Priests and rulers see confirmation of their righteousness. The plague is the enemy's main weapon. Instead of breaking the will, the epidemic only strengthens the determination to isolate. Most importantly, the disaster does not reach the 90% threshold. Yes, the population is declining, perhaps by 30 or 40% over a century, but this is not a demographic collapse, but a severe crisis. This section is devoted to military, technical, and diplomatic exchanges, so it is presented in a calm, analytical tone. By the middle of the 16th century, European powers, primarily Spain and Portugal, realized the futility of direct military invasion. The continent, protected by quarantine and having retained most of its population, proved too much for the small armies of the conquistadors. However, the thirst for precious metals did not disappear. A new era began, the era of forced diplomacy. Instead of fighting, Europeans were forced to trade. They established small, strictly isolated trading posts on the coast, similar to those that existed in Asia. These trading posts became the only points of legal contact. On the part of the indigenous empires, trade is conducted under the strictest state control. Any goods coming from Europe undergo a weeks-long cleansing, quarantine, before reaching the interior of the country. A controlled technological exchange begins, radically changing the face of American civilizations. The Aztecs and Incas are not interested in glass beads. They are interested in three things: metals, animals, and knowledge. They buy up iron ingots, which their craftsmen quickly learn to forge, creating swords, spearheads, and armor that surpass the old obsidian macahuitl. They import and begin to breed horses purposefully. This revolutionizes warfare and logistics. The Aztec armies become mobile, and the Inca road system, previously pedestrian, fills with horsemen and llama carts. But most importantly, they demand books. Treatises on fortification, metallurgy, shipbuilding, and mathematics are translated into Nahuatl and Quechua. American engineers, having studied European experience, began to build bastion fortifications around their capitals, Tenochtitlan and Cusco, making them virtually impregnable to European artillery of the time. What if this exchange had stabilized? By the 17th century, Mesoamerica and the Andes presented a completely different picture. The Aztec Empire, or, as it now called itself, the Mexican Confederation, used horses and iron weapons to solve its main internal problem, the loose structure of tribute. Instead of simply terrorizing its neighbors, the new reformed army allowed Tenochtitlan to truly centralize power. Former tributaries were integrated into the empire, and a new common threat from the Europeans united them around the central authority. Human sacrifice, already in decline, was finally abolished as a barbaric custom that hindered consolidation. The empire actively built a fleet on both coasts, controlling trade routes and keeping European pirates out of its waters. Tenochtitlan is transformed into a hybrid capital, where arsenals and universities are built alongside ancient pyramids. The Inca Empire, Tawantinsuyu, is also undergoing a transformation. The internal civil war between Huascar and Atahualpa, which in our history destroyed the empire, is taking place here against the backdrop of an external threat. This forces the victor, whoever he may be, to immediately seek ways to modernize. The Incas, with their unmatched administrative system, are implementing new technologies with remarkable efficiency. Horse breeding in the highlands, the introduction of the wheel, which they knew about but did not use, for mining and logistics, and the creation of a bureaucracy trained not only in Quipu knot writing, but also in Spanish literacy, strengthened their power. In the north of the continent, the Iroquois Confederacy and other alliances, Creeks, Choctaws, used the same tactics. They became buffer states, controlling the fur trade and skillfully playing on the contradictions between the English, French, and Dutch colonies, which were squeezed into a narrow coastal strip. They prevented the Europeans from advancing deeper into the continent, stopping them at the Appalachians for hundreds of years. Let's move on to the 18th and 19th centuries. The Napoleonic Wars are raging in Europe, and the Industrial Revolution is beginning. The American empires, having retained their sovereignty, enter this new world not as colonies, but as independent players. They are experiencing their own Meiji moment, as happened with Japan in our history. They realize that their technological lag behind Europe, especially in the military sphere, is growing again. The rulers of Mexico City and Cusco, as well as the leaders of the Northern Confederations, embark on a policy of forced modernization. They actively send thousands of their students to European universities, in Salamanca, Paris, Oxford, to study engineering, medicine, and law. At the same time, they invited European engineers and scientists to build their own factories, arsenals, and railways, paying them with gold and silver, which they had in abundance. The first steam engines for pumping water from silver mines were built in the Andes, and the first foundries were established in Mexico. The geopolitical map of the world looks completely different. There is no United States of America as we know it. North America is a patchwork quilt where coastal enclaves of European powers, New England, New France, neighbor the powerful Iroquois Confederacy, which controls the Great Lakes, and Greater Mexico, whose influence extends to the former Mississippi. The revolutions in South America, which in our history were struggles of Creoles against Spain, take the form here of national liberation movements within the modernizing but still authoritarian Inca Empire, demanding a constitution and rights. The Monroe Doctrine in this world is either impossible or has the opposite meaning. It is the American empires that warn Europe against interfering in the affairs of the New World. The Atlantic Ocean becomes the arena not of colonial expansion, but of a complex diplomatic game between three equal centers of power: Europe, North America, and South America. Let us compare the well-known outcome with a possible alternative. In our history, the consequences of colonization determine the political and cultural map of the world for centuries to come, creating enormous differences between regions. We are accustomed to perceiving this as the natural order of things, as if no other option were possible. But history shows that the slightest change in events can lead to a completely different future. Let's look at the 20th and 21st centuries of this world and see what it could have been like. This helps us understand how fragile reality can be. The planet turns out to be truly multipolar, and the distribution of influence between regions is much more even. America is not perceived as a former colony of Europe, but as an independent center of development that has existed for many centuries. Economic and cultural ties between continents are based on mutual respect, not dependence or subordination. Different civilizations preserve their languages and traditions, making the world much more diverse. Such a world is more resilient to crises because it does not depend on a single cultural or political pole. Multipolarity becomes the basis of global balance. Tenochtitlan, renamed Mexico City, is a bustling metropolis, rivaling New York or Tokyo in population and influence. It is becoming the largest political center in America and a place where ancient traditions develop side by side with cutting-edge technologies. The city occupies an important place in the global economy thanks to its strong industry and enormous scientific potential. Its streets are full of bright colors, and Aztec culture is present in the music, religion, and lifestyle of its citizens. It hosts major scientific conferences and international forums. Mexico City has become a symbol of how an ancient civilization has been able to enter the modern era without destroying its identity. Its architecture is a fusion of ancient pyramids, colonial Baroque, which came through trade rather than conquest, and modern engineering. On the streets, you can see tall temples and modern skyscrapers standing side by side, creating an unfamiliar but harmonious cityscape. Trade with Europe brings new forms of art, which local craftsmen adapt to their traditions. The metropolis becomes a living museum of history, where each era leaves its mark. New technologies make it possible to preserve ancient buildings, combining them with sustainable engineering solutions. The city becomes the cultural capital of the continent. The Inca Empire, transformed into the Andean Federation, is a world leader in high-altitude construction and terrace farming. The heirs of the Incas have managed to develop technologies that have been used in the Andes for centuries and turn them into the basis of a modern engineering school. They create sustainable mountain cities that can withstand earthquakes and harsh climates, making them in demand around the world. Terrace farming helps combat climate change by providing millions of people with stable food production. The Federation actively cooperates with other countries, sharing its knowledge. It is becoming one of the key scientific centers of the planet. The Andean Federation offers the world unique solutions in the era of climate change, showing that ancient methods can be combined with the latest technologies. Their scientists are developing solar energy adapted to high-altitude areas, making the region energy independent. They create agronomic systems capable of operating at high altitudes and help other countries combat drought. The Federation is becoming an example of how sustainable development can be based on tradition rather than the destruction of nature. This approach is attracting the attention of environmentalists and politicians around the world. The Andes are becoming one of the laboratories of the future. The Northern Confederations, based on collectivist principles, offer a different model of social organization. These societies emphasize communal responsibility rather than personal gain, which creates a stable support network between people. In such regions, councils of elders and community meetings play an important role, making decisions collectively. Their economies are based on the equitable distribution of resources and mutual assistance. This allows them to avoid the sharp social contrasts characteristic of many industrialized countries. Confederations are becoming an alternative to European individualism. This system attracts thinkers from around the world who are looking for new ways to organize society. Northern Confederations show that high technology can be combined with respect for nature and traditions. Their schools teach the philosophy not only of their own peoples but also of other cultures, which shapes a broad worldview. Political leaders of the communities often participate in international discussions, offering solutions based on collective cooperation. This approach makes them important players in world politics. Their model of sustainability is becoming an example for many countries. World philosophy has been enriched not only by the legacy of Plato and Confucius, but also by Aztec cosmology and Inca ethics. Scientists are studying ancient ideas about the world, finding in them ideas that are still relevant today. Aztec cosmology helps us understand the cyclical nature of natural processes, while Inca ethics emphasize the importance of social duty. These ideas are becoming part of the global philosophical heritage. Universities around the world are including the study of American civilizations in their curricula, broadening the horizons of knowledge. This is how a new global cultural map is being formed. In our history, the Great Death depopulated 2 continents, creating a vacuum that was filled by European civilization. Disease destroyed most of the population of America, depriving it of the ability to resist the conquerors. This led to enormous cultural losses, many of which cannot be recovered. Europe, on the other hand, gained new lands, resources, and political influence, which strengthened its position. As a result, a world dominated by European values, law, and languages was formed. This outcome became the basis of the modern global system. This led to the world we live in today, where Europe's cultural influence continues to be enormous. Even countries that were not once colonized are adopting European models of education and political systems. However, this picture of the world has long obscured the extent of the losses suffered by other civilizations. Many important traditions and knowledge have disappeared without a trace. This makes our understanding of history incomplete. Sometimes we forget what the planet could have been like without this tragedy. In the alternative reality we have considered, this did not happen, and the peoples of America lived their history differently. Preventing the pandemic saved not only millions of lives, but also vast cultural systems. These civilizations developed gradually, transitioning from ancient structures to modern states. They adapted to external challenges while preserving their own identities. Thanks to this, America did not become a target for conquest. It became an equal partner to other regions. In this world, there is no such thing as the third world or developing countries, at least in America. Each region is shaped by its own resources and knowledge, rather than by external pressure. There is a free exchange of technology, goods, and ideas between continents. The ancient empires of America give their technologies to the world and receive innovations from other cultures in return. Competition takes place on equal terms, which makes relations between states more honest. Such a world opens up more opportunities for every nation. The story we have examined is not just a fantasy, but an attempt to understand the key factor that determined the fate of two continents. The point of divergence was not weapons or political will, but the management of information about the epidemiological threat. A simple but timely decision on the Great Quarantine, taken by civilizations with fast communication systems, is what saved them from collapse. This single shift, the transformation of the pandemic from an apocalyptic catastrophe into a severe but manageable crisis, changed everything. Instead of conquest, there was forced trade. Instead of colonialism, there was controlled technology exchange. Instead of a scorched desert, the preservation of sovereignty and subsequent modernization along one's own path rather than one imposed by others. Instead of a world where one civilization dominates the rest, we would have a world that is more complex, more balanced, and perhaps more sustainable. A world in which Tenochtitlan, Cusco, and Cahokia would stand alongside Rome, Constantinople, and Beijing as the cradles of modern civilization. This reminds us that history is never predetermined. Subscribe so you don't miss new versions of history.